Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi. I play the Doctor, and you're watching EMS Productions.
Hello everybody and welcome along to today's video where I'm going to be reviewing last Saturday's absolutely phenomenal episode, World Enough and Time. So yes guys, wow, what an episode that was. I mean, it's pretty much the best episode of the series so far for me, probably the best episode since Heaven Sent. It was just so brilliantly crafted by Stephen Moffat and everybody involved in it to create a brilliant idea and plot through it all, a lot of mystery and intrigue, then the reveals at the end, the cliffhanger. It all just worked together so fantastically. Well, I guess the main place to start off is the very beginning, where we see the Doctor seemingly regenerate, or at least about to regenerate, as the 12th Doctor saying goodbye maybe. So is this from Christmas? Is this from the next episode? We don't really know at the moment. I mean, tomorrow, I believe, I will be doing a video with a lot of theories about when is the 12th Doctor actually going to regenerate. So I won't say too much about this for now, but certainly it was quite a dramatic opening, but we're yet to see quite where it's going to come into play with the story. Then past there we get lots of brilliant sort of scenes between Missy, Bill and Nardole and the Doctor as well, in the sort of foursome crew that we've got in this week's episode, for at least for part of it, on this ship with such a brilliant idea and a brilliant concept. I think that with a ship that's where time's going faster at one end than the other. It's something I'd read about in the Doctor Who magazine previously, so I kind of already knew that was the concept and the idea they were going to be running with in this episode. But I think it is a really kind of interesting idea and something that's never been quite explored before, I don't think, where within the same spaceship you've got completely different time zones. So like hundreds of years are passing down where Bill is at the bottom, and at the top 2 days have passed. I think it's just a very interesting way of sort of creating a different kind of story. But I have to say I absolutely loved Michelle Gomez as Missy in this episode. She portrayed it absolutely brilliantly when she was doing her sort of slightly funny doctor impression, in a sense, when she pretended to be the Doctor early on in the episode. It was sort of so brilliantly done. I mean, the dialogue was phenomenal anyway from Stephen. He just knows how to write Missy so perfectly, but then Michelle can just pull off those lines absolutely brilliantly. I loved her. I loved the way she just says Doctor Who in that sort of Scottish accent, Doctor Who, in such a... That was a terrible impression there. Please, apologies for that. But I just love the way that she is able to just do those little lines and everything with the sort of Scottish voice she's got. I think it just works so brilliantly and really is as she is such a brilliant incarnation of the Master. She is very different to what we had with the John Sim Master, but she is still very much the Master. But clearly it was always going to be a bad idea for the Doctor to let Missy sort of lead the crew for a little bit there. I mean, it wasn't even Missy who actually caused Bill to kind of die, or it would seem. It was just that random blue dude, who I can't even remember his name, George or something like that, I think is his name, who decided he was going to shoot Bill because of something. And that was... I don't know whether that was unexpected. For me personally, they'd already been indicated that there was something that was going to happen to her during this episode, fairly significant. Just a thing happens is all they were allowed to say. And naturally you're going to assume maybe is she going to get killed or something like that. So I wasn't massively shocked when it did happen and she got shot. I mean, it was still a pretty big shock that it actually happened right this early on in the episode as well. But it wasn't as much of a shock as maybe it was for some people. And then we had a lovely little flashback scene just straight after that, where we sort of had a look back at why the Doctor had come up with this idea and really his thoughts about Missy, and it just shows how much of a sort of friend he wants to be with the Master, but that sort of all the bad things that she keeps on doing is just sort of stopping him from being able to be that. It was some really poignant scenes between the two of them as the Doctor sort of remembering the past back in his childhood with the Doctor, with the two of them together, and how they used to sort of dream of seeing the universe and everything, but then it's just ended up with the Master destroying the universe and the Doctor trying to hold it together in a sense. So I thought that was some really brilliant scenes, and just kind of, yeah, again, showing how much friends they really could be if the Master / Missy really wanted to be it as well. And then we introduce the creepy hospital, the sort of cyber hospital, but not that we know at this time. It's just some mysterious, horrible, creepy hospital where Bill's been sent to for some reason, and clearly she's now got the cyber chest unit on her front. So it's all looking great, really, and then the magical Mr. Razor appears. But who could he possibly be? No, I have to say that John Sim was phenomenal in this episode. Portraying Razor, he did such a brilliant job. I mean, the prosthetics was brilliant, so it didn't look very much like him. The voice he pulled was fantastic, and just his performance as that different character for most of this episode, he pulled off so brilliantly. It just felt so classic Master, pulling off the disguise and everything, doing the voice, the whole lot. He portrayed that so well. and I think it was really brilliantly done in the episode. Even if I have to say it was extremely frustrating that we knew that John Sim was coming back in this episode. I'm not going to lie, the moment I saw Razor on screen, I knew, yep, that's the Master, because it had already been rumoured that that was sort of what was going to happen. And he does look different, but if you know it's him, you can very much see that it's him. So it's just very frustrating. Obviously, I've seen lots of different opinions on it, but from our point of view, seeing the John Sim reveal being spoiled, because clearly this episode was built around that reveal. That was the whole idea, was the sort of episode with the Master being in disguise and building up to him being revealed. Yet we already knew that was going to happen. So I think that was a little bit frustrating that was something they'd already revealed, because it did just kind of sort of reduce the effect and the impact of that reveal, because it was absolutely brilliant. It was probably up there with the reveal in Utopia, when we see that the Professor Yana is actually the Master. It was pretty much as good as that, with the Master sort of meeting with Missy and sort of throwing a few little hints out as to what was actually happening, and then to rip that mask off so perfectly. It was a stunning reveal, and if we didn't know that was happening, it would have had so much more impact. There would have been a complete meltdown in the Doctor Who fandom if that had not been known beforehand. Can you just imagine what it would have been like on Saturday night if we didn't know that was happening, and suddenly at the end he just pulls the mask off and boom, it's the John Sim Master? It would have been mental. So that is really frustrating that that was revealed beforehand. So it was still a really good reveal, and I really enjoyed it as an episode and everything, but it did just take away from it a little bit that they'd already announced it. Now, on the other side of things is the whole stuff with the Cybermen, or the sort of creation, the genesis of the Cybermen, as the John Sim Master gets to say. It was lots of brilliant stuff in that creepy hospital earlier on, when you see all these sort of half-converted patients that are actually screaming in pain because they haven't managed to develop, I guess, what they're going to call the emotional inhibitor that stops them feeling that pain. So for now, all these patients are just being muted from their pain, even though they're just sat there in absolute agony and they cannot do anything about it. It is pretty gruesome and pretty horrific to kind of see, and it was very well portrayed, that sort of horror element to the story, as Bill kind of witnesses and wanders through this mysterious and creepy and horrific hospital where people are being half converted into sort of Cybermen, but not quite yet. So that was really well done by Stephen for the writing, and also the direction. Everything was so well shot to keep that really creepy element of it. And I have to also say hats off to Pearl Mackie. She performed absolutely brilliant as Bill in this story. Obviously she had quite a large chunk of the sort of story with her and Razor, and she really pulled it off brilliantly, obviously after her having herself shot in the chest and having that cyber unit on, then all the way through that episode sort of working with Razor. She just played it really well, I thought, until obviously she's turned over by Razor. As for Peter Capaldi, he had some good scenes. Obviously there was the dramatic opening, and then past that he did have some good moments, but this episode didn't really feel like he was the focus so much. He was there to kind of get to where the two Masters on Bill are, but it was a lot more sort of about Missy early on, then some nice scenes with the Doctor and Bill, and then a lot about Bill and Razor later on. So to some degree I felt like Peter Capaldi took a back step in this episode. He wasn't out of the episode by any means, but it just felt like the focus wasn't quite so much on him, which maybe was a little bit disappointing given we've only got now 2 more episodes of Peter Capaldi in Doctor Who as the Doctor, because of course he's been narrating at Christmas. Well, presumably, but check it out tomorrow for more info on that. So it was a little bit disappointing maybe that you didn't see so much of him, but it just wasn't really needed for the plot of this episode, and certainly it's looking like he's going to be a lot more involved in next week's story. But then of course the reveal of Cyber Bill at the end of the episode, it wasn't wholly unexpected by that point, but certainly going into this episode I had no idea that she was going to become a Cyberman. I had no inkling at all. I mean, I had suggested it in my preview video, but I thought it was more unlikely because Danny Pink had become a Cyberman just 2 series ago, but they've gone for it again, they've gone for this idea again, and certainly she has essentially become the first ever Cyberman, is Bill, and the fact that they finally made canon the idea that you can, in the older one, the Nassian Cyberman, you can actually have the whole face and the body behind this sort of mask and everything, which may lead to her being able to survive or something. I'm not quite sure exactly how they're going to do it. But it was such a brilliant reveal of sort of that darkened cupboard, and then it's that Cyberman stepping out to then reveal that it is Bill, the Cyberman. And it just ended on such a brilliant cliffhanger, I must admit. It's one of my favourites in a while, just the way that suddenly we get the reveal of the John Sim Master as with Missy, we get the reveal of Cyber Bill, then they all come together, stood in front of the Doctor together, Master saying it's the genesis of the Cyberman, and just that sort of zooming in shot of Cyber Bill was just so brilliantly crafted by everybody involved in that part of it, and just sort of set up next week's episode so fantastically that we've got two masters. We've got Bill as a Cyberman. What on earth is the Doctor going to do? Now, the other things to, of course, give a shout out to are both Rachel Talalay for the direction, which was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, can you expect anything less at this stage? She is probably the best director we've ever had for Doctor Who. And once again, all that stuff in that creepy hospital was sort of done so brilliantly to keep that creepy horror element to it. The shots of the space station from the outside were so brilliant, sort of panning shots and everything like that. Then the reveal of the Johnson Master was just crafted for perfection, pretty much. So I really haven't got nothing negative to say about Rachel. Her direction is just so good. And she's directing the next two episodes as well, so it's all fantastic. And the other shout out has got to go to Murray Gold for the music in this episode, which was once again absolutely phenomenal. He just knows how to score an episode. He really is. He's been doing Doctor Who for 12, 13 years now, and yet he can still pull out some absolutely brilliant and original scores for an episode like this. All the sort of creepy, choiry, choral voices that we had when we were in that hospital experiencing the creation of the first ever Cybermen. There was lots of little hints to some of the notes from the 80s Cybermen theme and the 60s Cybermen theme. There were just little sort of hints and nods to that, but still bringing that brilliant choral element as well. And then, of course, all the little elements of the Master's theme leading up to his reveal was just so brilliantly crafted as well. And that final little section of music into the cliffhanger with sort of the Master's theme being overrun by a bit of Bill's theme and the choral sort of theme as well of the episode was just neat crafted to lead into that cliffhanger. So hats off to Murray Gold, hats off to Stephen Moffat, hats off to Rachel Talalay, an absolutely brilliantly crafted episode. But of course, this is only the setup. We've still got another episode to go, a full hour to really develop the story. And as much as I did love this episode and really enjoyed it, it is very much build up for the next episode more than anything else. So I think for some people they said it was a bit slow and not so interesting, but I think it's just because this is a lot of setup in this episode rather than really the bulk of the story, which I think is going to come next week when we've got 3 different types of Cybermen, massive sort of bombs being chucked at them, fights, guns, laser screwdrivers, the whole lot. It's all going off next week. So I think this episode was a really brilliant setup to it, but a lot of it will be down to what happens next week as to how I think overall this finale is rated. Because if you look at it, they've made quite a few sort of significant, well, the big significant thing is obviously that Bill is a Cyberman. So how are they going to go back on that? Obviously that will then devalue her becoming a Cyberman if she does just get saved and happy days. So it'll be very interesting to see how Moffat goes about sort of working with the Cyber Bill that we have now and seeing, is she going to be saved or is that it? Who knows? But there you go, guys. I'm going to stop rambling on and now about this episode. I just absolutely loved it. Definitely my best episode of the series so far, and I cannot wait for next week's episode. So guys, do let me know in the comments below what you thought of this episode. Did you like it as much as me? What are your theories for next week? What are your theories on this episode? Just let me know anything you like in the comments below. But for now, guys, remember to like the video, subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you again very soon for another video. Goodbye.